The ache of being alone doesn't scream, it doesn't bleed. It lingers, quiet, invisible, heavy. A kind of weight that seeps into your bones and wraps around your thoughts until everything feels distant, disconnected, almost unreal. It's not the absence of people that hurts the most. It's the absence of meaning in the silence. It's lying awake at night and wondering why the world feels like it's moving without you, why the laughter of others sounds so far away, like echoes from a place you're not allowed to enter. There's a moment when you begin to question your worth, your path, your place in all this noise. Why am I alone? But what if this isn't a punishment? What if this silence, this unbearable stillness, is a message? Not from the world, but from something deeper, from life itself. Maybe the isolation you're feeling isn't proof that you're forgotten, but proof that you're being called. Carl Jung didn't see solitude as a wound to be healed. He saw it as a sacred initiation, a moment where the self begins to speak after a lifetime of being silenced, a threshold you have to cross if you ever want to stop living as a copy and begin living as your true self. It doesn't look like a blessing. It looks like losing everything that used to keep you comfortable. It looks like being stripped down to the core, raw and exposed, with no audience and no applause. It looks like silence so loud you can't ignore the parts of you you've been hiding from. And that's the point. In the quiet, you begin to see what you truly are. Not who you were told to be, not who the world needed you to be, but the version of you that was buried beneath survival, expectation, and noise. Most people run from this. They mask it with constant stimulation. They chase new relationships, scroll through endless distractions, surround themselves with noise just to avoid what waits in the silence. But those who don't run, those who stay, start to transform. Not all at once, not in some grand awakening, but slowly, painfully, beautifully. The stillness becomes a mirror, and in that mirror they begin to recognize someone they haven't seen in years. Someone real, someone whole. It hurts because it's supposed to. Growth always feels like breaking at first. There's no evolution without discomfort, no selfhood without loss. You lose the parts of you that were never really yours. You grieve the masks, the roles, the identities that once made you feel safe. And in that grieving, you begin to remember, not who you were told you are, but who you've always been beneath the noise. This is the wilderness Jung spoke of, the internal desert, the place where you are forced to rely on something deeper than approval or connection. It's the forge, the fire that melts everything false, and the longer you sit in it, the clearer things become. You begin to see the stories you've been living that were never truly yours. You start to hear the voice that was buried beneath the demands of the world. And though it speaks in whispers, through dreams, through gut feelings, through flashes of memory, it speaks truth. That voice is yours, the real you, the one who doesn't need validation to feel whole, the one who doesn't shrink to be accepted, the one who remembers what freedom feels like, even if it's been years. But here's the truth. Not everyone will hear that voice. Not because it isn't speaking, but because they never sat still long enough to listen. They ran from the pain, called it rejection, cursed it as loneliness, and they missed the invitation. Because that's what this is, an invitation. To stop pretending, to stop performing, to come home to yourself. The ones who emerged from solitude changed are not the ones who fought it. They are the ones who allowed it to break them open, who let the silence carve away everything false, who faced the grief, the regret, the guilt, and didn't look away. And in doing so, they stepped into something rare, something whole. Not perfection, not invincibility, but realness. Grounded, honest, untouchable realness. You don't find yourself in the crowd. You find yourself when there's no one left to impress, when the applause stops, when the masks fall, when all that remains is you and the echo of your own breath. That's where the work begins. That's where the healing starts. That's where you remember. You were never broken. You were buried. And now, in this silence, in this ache, in this sacred aloneness, you are beginning to rise. There comes a moment when the noise fades and you're left alone with yourself. No distractions, no performance, just silence. And in that silence, something long forgotten begins to stir. The parts of you you've ignored, denied, or disowned. They rise. The anger you told yourself was too much, the sadness buried beneath smiles, the envy you were ashamed to admit, the fear you tried to outrun, they don't vanish when you suppress them. They wait, patiently, and when solitude finds you, whether by choice or by force, those shadows step forward. At first it can feel like being ambushed by your own soul. You sit in a quiet room, and suddenly you're face to face with everything you tried not to feel. But that confrontation is not a punishment. It's an invitation. Because what you suppress doesn't die, it festers. And Carl Jung understood this better than most. He taught that these disowned parts, this shadow, must be faced, embraced, and integrated. Only then can we begin to feel whole. That's what solitude offers, not just peace, but the chance to piece yourself back together. Most people seek happiness by avoiding pain. They distract, numb, entertain, escape. But the truth is, peace doesn't come from escape. It comes from confrontation. When you can sit with your pain, not push it away, not fix it, not fear it, but truly sit with it and listen, something powerful happens. The pain loses its grip. You begin to understand it. And in that understanding, a quiet strength grows. It's in those moments that you start to see clearly. You realize which relationships were built on fear or need. You recognize the ways you betrayed yourself to keep the peace. You notice the masks you wore just to be accepted. And you begin, slowly, courageously, to take those masks off, to stop performing, to start living in alignment with the truth of who you are, not who the world told you to be. That's not just healing, that's liberation. You may reconnect with parts of yourself long forgotten, a dream that once made your heart race, a passion you abandoned because it didn't seem practical, a voice inside that used to speak with joy and wonder before it was silenced by judgment or fear. Solitude has a way of resurfacing what's real, knowledge that once those dreams return, they no longer feel like childish fantasies. They feel like necessities, like soul work. But most people will never touch that depth. They fear the silence. They mistake solitude for loneliness, not knowing the treasures buried beneath the discomfort. But if life has placed you in solitude, even if it wasn't your choice, maybe it's not a punishment. Maybe it's a summons, a call to step away from the noise and listen to what's been whispering within you all along. Truth doesn't always come in a gentle voice. Sometimes it shakes you, cuts you open, forces you to see what you've tried not to see. But there's freedom in that too, because once you see clearly, you can no longer pretend. And once you stop pretending, you start reclaiming. That's why people who walk through solitude and come out of the other side carry a different kind of power. It's not loud. It doesn't need attention. It's calm, certain, deeply rooted. They don't chase approval anymore. They don't beg to be seen, because they've already seen themselves, and that's enough. The strength you gain in solitude isn't handed to you. You earn it. In the nights that feel endless, in the silence that presses down, in the tears that come without reason, in the moments where you feel like breaking, and sometimes you do break. But in that breaking, something beautiful is born, a version of you that's not afraid of their reflection, not afraid of their past, not afraid of their truth. Jung once said that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But those who do, those who return again and again to their inner world with honesty, those who look at their flaws without flinching, they become something rare. They become whole. So if you find yourself alone, don't rush to fill the silence. Let it be. Let it teach you. Solitude is not absence. It's a presence, a sacred one. And though it might feel empty, it is full of potential. It's the fertile soil where your truest self can take root. It is where you learn to stand without leaning, speak without needing to be heard, exist without needing to be validated. This is where self-trust is born. There's a fire in solitude, a refining fire. Not one that destroys, but one that burns away everything false. All the layers you built to survive, but never truly lived in. And once those layers fall away, you're left with something raw, something real, the you that's been waiting underneath it all. Not the polished, filtered version, the honest, uncurated self. This is not a detour from life. It is life. It is the path inward, the passage into your unconscious, the place where old wounds live, where lost dreams sleep, where your deepest instincts stir. And the door to that world doesn't open in chaos. It opens in stillness, in the moments when everything else goes quiet. It might feel like isolation, like loss. But beneath that ache is a doorway, one that leads not outward but inward. And walking through it may be the bravest thing you'll ever do. Because it means turning toward everything you were told to hide. It means choosing truth over comfort, depth over distraction, wholeness over approval. Solitude is not a mistake. It is a rite of passage. Just like winter seems still and lifeless while roots grow deep beneath the surface, your solitude is shaping you in unseen ways. Don't underestimate the power of what looks like stillness, because the soul moves in silence. That's why mystics, seekers, and sages across time have all stepped away from the world to find what the world could never offer. Not escape, but encounter. Not noise, but meaning. And this is not a passive experience. You don't simply wait for revelation to strike. You engage. You feel. You question. You weep. And in that sacred struggle, you start to see your shadows, not as threats, but as guides. They were never there to hurt you. They were trying to lead you home. This is the essence of becoming whole. Not perfection, not being always light, but standing fully in all that you are, your wounds, your wisdom, your contradictions, and saying, this is me, entire, undivided. But that kind of knowing, that kind of acceptance requires fire. It requires discomfort. It requires the courage to sit in your own skin without flinching. And in a world that tells you to numb, to rush, to fix, choosing to feel, choosing to stay is a radical act. True healing isn't pretty. It's not clean. It's messy and raw and unpredictable. But it's real. And in solitude, that healing begins. Time slows. The noise fades. You start to notice your breath, your thoughts, the quiet pull of your own soul. You begin to forgive. Others, yes, but most importantly, yourself. And that forgiveness, that presence, that depth becomes the foundation of a life not built on illusion, but on truth. You begin to see through the lies that held you down for years, the whispers that told you weren't enough, that you were too damaged, that no one could ever truly understand you. These stories start to dissolve when you stop running from them and meet them face to face. You sit in the quiet and finally listen. And in that silence, something unexpected begins to rise. Your imagination, your longing, your truth. You start to dream again, but not about trophies or titles. You dream about meaning, about purpose, about the kind of presence you want to bring into the world. You start asking the questions that matter. Who am I when there's no one watching? What does a life of truth actually feel like? And in asking, you begin to rewrite everything. Not according to what the world wants from you, but according to what your soul has always known. This is the moment you begin to come home to yourself. You peel back the layers of performance and expectation. You stop chasing what looks impressive and start choosing what feels real. But this path isn't easy. It's not meant to be. This is sacred work. The kind that asks everything of you. The kind that most people avoid because it's quieter than the world and more honest than comfort allows. Some spend their entire lives avoiding this work. They keep themselves busy, distracted, endlessly surrounded by noise. They settle for shallow connections and call them enough. They keep running, always running. But then there are those who stop, who sit down in the fire and let it burn away everything false. They emerge not perfect, but grounded, not invincible, but free. They still ache. They still bleed. But inside them lives a calm that nothing outside can replicate. They've walked through pain with their eyes open, and that kind of courage, that kind of stillness, it changes a person. It refines the soul. Solitude then becomes a crucible. Not a punishment, but a rite of passage. You walk in raw and uncertain. You walk out shaped by the flames. And once you've made it through, you carry something rare, the wisdom of fire. It doesn't announce itself with thunder. It arrives quietly, the shift that signals the end of your solitude. One day you just notice. The silence doesn't hurt anymore. The stillness feels like a friend. What once felt like loneliness now feels like peace. Something has shifted. You've changed. And now comes the part no one warns you about, bringing that change back into the world. People think you go back to your life, but how do you return to something you've outgrown? You don't. You build new ground beneath your feet. This is where the real work begins. Not just knowing who you are, but living it, walking it out, letting it bleed into every corner of your life. The old rhythms don't fit anymore. The old conversations feel thin. The old patterns call to you, but you don't answer the same way. You crave depth now. You crave meaning, and that craving makes things unfamiliar, even disorienting. You feel like a guest in your own life. Some will notice, some will celebrate your growth, others will try to pull you back to who you used to be. But you've seen too much now. You've changed too much. You begin to understand that your transformation isn't something you need to explain. It's not loud. It's not performative. It lives in your choices, in your pace, in the way you speak only when you mean it, in the way you say no without apology, You're not performing for approval anymore. You're not shrinking for comfort. You've learned to stand beside yourself, and that changes everything. There's a quiet power in that kind of loyalty. It doesn't need to shout. It just is. And people can feel it. They can feel it in your stillness, in your energy, in the way you're fully there without losing yourself. At night, new relationships start to appear, shaped by honesty instead of need. Opportunities align not with what you used to want, but with who you've become. The external world slowly begins to mirror the inner one you've fought to build. And when challenges come, and they will, you don't collapse the same way. You don't mistake discomfort for danger. You've sat with your pain. You've faced your shadow. You know how to return to yourself now. That's your anchor. Solitude taught you how to be your own sanctuary. Not just survive in the silence, but thrive in it. You found a voice there, a resilience no one could give you. And now, when you speak, it's different. It comes from somewhere deep. The world may still rush around you, but you've slowed down inside. You no longer need the noise. You've found something better, presence. And that presence is rare. It's what people are starving for without even realizing it. You become the calm in the chaos. Not because you've avoided the storm, but because you've walked through it. You start to notice what others miss. The sorrow behind smiles, the fear behind bravado. You don't rush to fix them. You hold space. You listen. You offer something no one else can. Yourself. Not a version, not a performance, but the grounded, quiet truth of who you are. In doing so, you remind others of something sacred. They too have a self-worth returning to. Without preaching, without trying, your stillness becomes a kind of permission. You don't forget your solitude. You return to it, not because you're broken, but because you're devoted. It's not a place of exile anymore. It's a temple, a sanctuary you visit to remember, because growth never stops. The path keeps unfolding. There's always more to learn, more to shed, and more to discover. But now, you're not afraid of the unknown. You've faced it and survived. You've heard your own soul in the quiet and believed it. That knowing lives inside you now, like a compass, like a flame. You no longer chase clarity in the outside world. You've looked into your own heart, and you've woken up, not with fanfare, but with steadiness. You know what peace tastes like now. You know what it means to have your own back. You walk through life differently, not trying to belong to the world, but no longer lost in it either. You carry your solitude not as a scar, but as a source, a truth, a knowing. You belong to yourself. And from that place, everything changes, because the gift was never escape. It was embodiment. It was never about becoming someone new. It was about remembering who you've always been. Not broken, not behind, just being shaped by the fire into something stronger, quieter, or more whole. And now, you're not looking back. You're moving forward as the person you were always meant to be.